Hi Stampers, my name is Claudia and I'm with Time for Stamping. Today I wanted to show you a very pretty card made using the Beautiful Pumpkins bundle, brand new bundle. Comes with two-step stamping for both a larger and a smaller pumpkin, as well as pretty pumpkin vines and a couple of sizes of stems for the pumpkins. And the die set with it has the outline images to cut out both the pumpkins and the stems, as well as extra vines here. Okay, so let me get started. For the base of my card, I'm using basic beige. This is 8.5 by 5.5, and it's cut at 4 1/4, or scored at 4 1/4, I should say. And it's going to be in the landscape position. Okay, and my first layer is Cajun Craze. This, I believe, is 5 1/8 by 4 1/8. And I'm just going to go ahead and layer that on top of my card base. Now, I like using glue. A lot of people like using the double-sided adhesive, so whatever adhesive you prefer to use. My next layer is a layer of Gathering Together Designer Series paper, and I love this one. It's got the very very vanilla basic beige, and then it's got some gold accents in it, which really are pretty. The other side is a very pretty plaid as well, but I wanted this side to show as it shows off the pumpkins a little bit better. So again, this is just going on top of my card front. And you want to be careful when you put this on. You'll notice the little kind of leaf images here, if you want them going this way or this way. Just be careful how you put them on according to how you want them. Do you want your leaves falling? Do you want them coming up like that? My next layer is yet another piece from the Gathering Together stamp or bundle Designer Series paper, and this one I trimmed with a new label die that comes with the Branching Out bundle. Now again, this is just a basic kind of a label die. In the bundle with the die set, it comes with several different sizes of this, so it's a really nice die set to have. And if you notice, it has the stitching around the outside, which also makes that very pretty. Okay, let's set that aside for a minute, and then we're going to do some stamping. And as I mentioned, this is two-step stamping. So the colors I'm using are Cajun Craze and Pumpkin Pie. Now for the more detailed stamp, I'm using the Cajun Craze. And I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that right there. And it's kind of a larger stamp, so you want to make sure you hold that on there for a few extra seconds to make sure all that ink transfers. And then I'm going to do the smaller pumpkin as well. And to fit it on this scrap paper here, I'm going to turn it sideways. Now the cardstock I'm stamping on is Peach Pie. So I get that nice light orange color in between there. Okay, now originally, I'll tell you, originally I stamped this on very vanilla, and then you have a lot of white showing through, which I really didn't care for that look. That's why I switched over to Peach Pie. Okay, my next color is Pumpkin Pie, and this is the more solid of the stamps. So I'm just going to put that right over this one. And you can see how pretty that turns out. And if you notice, as I said, you have some spaces in between here, which that's the way the stamp was designed. But when you put it on Peach Pie, you're bringing in a different shade of orange. So I really like that effect on it. Okay, and for the small pumpkin, the same thing. I've got Pumpkin Pie, and I'm stamping right over the detailed stamped image. that I stamped with the Cajun Craze. So now I have a two-tone pumpkin on top of peach pie, which gives it like 3 shades of orange. Let's put that aside. And the next stamping I'm going to do is on crumb cake, and I'm using pecan pie, and I'm going to stamp one of each of the size stems. So I'm putting both stamps on there like that. And again, by stamping on crumb cake as opposed to very vanilla or white, I get another shade of brown in there, which I think adds a little bit of realism to it. And I think it just looks nicer having it like that. Okay, so now I'm going to use the dies to cut this out. And let's see. Here is my large die, my pumpkin dies. So let me get that situated. And this does leave a little bit of a border around the pumpkins. And again, that's why I did prefer stamping on the peach pie, so that I have the orange background and border rather than a white or very vanilla border. And you'll see what I mean in just a minute when I show you these. Okay, so here are my pumpkins, and as you can see, it has just a little bit of a border around there, and it looks much nicer with the pale orange, the peach pie color, as opposed to having a white border around that. Okay, and now to cut out my, here we go, my stems. There's one to fit that one, and one to fit this one. So let me cut these out. And this really is the only dies from this pumpkin set that I'm using to cut out anything. But I will tell you that I did use the other little dies that come with it, which are the vines, the leafy pumpkin vines, to cut some of the vines out. Okay, so there are my stems. And what I'm actually going to do here is go ahead and glue these stems on here so they have just a few minutes to dry. And I think it would be better if I actually put the glue on the pumpkin and put my little stem there. And my puppy is saying hello to you. I don't know why. He usually is very quiet when I'm doing this. Okay, so there's my 2 pumpkins. Aren't they cute? I'm just going to set these aside for a minute. And now let me show you what I like to do. And again, I was teaching this in a class the other day, and they were very surprised when I told them I cut all these items out in colors rather than just either white or very vanilla cardstock. So for the leaves, now these leaves are coming from either the Label Me Grateful dies or the paper pumpkin add-on for September. Pretty little leaves here, and these are from the Label dies. Now these vines are from the Beautiful Pumpkin set. We have a larger vine and a smaller one. And then again, these pretty little acorns, which is from the Label Me Grateful set. So as you can see, I've cut these from different colored cardstock. Now the vines I cut out of crumb cake. All of the leaves I cut out of crushed curry, and this little stem of acorns I cut out of basic beige. And what I'm going to do with these, let me just put these aside for a little bit, is just use my sponge daubers and put on a little extra color on those. So for the leaves, I'm actually going to use Mossy Meadow on top of that crumb cake. Okay, let me pull you in just a little bit, and you'll see how pretty this looks when you add just that little bit of color on there. It makes it, again, just a little bit more realistic, and it's not quite as stark as if you cut the cardstock out of, like, say, mossy meadow. You're going to have a dark mossy meadow stem. So if you just add a little bit on here, you're adding that green color without it being overwhelming and without white showing through, because we've stamped it on crumb cake. Okay, so you can see how pretty that looks. And for these little acorns, again, I'm going to use a sponge dauber and put some color on that. And again, these are out of Basic Beige, and I'm going to put, let's see, some pecan pie on this. Okay, so again, just daubing a little bit of color on there. You can make it as dark or as light as you want. There we go. So there are my little acorns. Okay, and then I've got a set of large leaves here that are like all together, and then I've got 3 of the smaller leaves. So for the large set of leaves, I'm going to use pumpkin pie and a sponge dauber, of course. So we're going to add some color to this crushed curry leaf set here. And it just makes it a very pretty golden color, which is just beautiful for the fall time. Okay, so there are my pretty leaves, and you can see just putting a little bit of pumpkin pie, the difference. This is crushed curry, and this is what crushed curry looks like with a little bit of pumpkin pie daubed onto it. Okay, so for the small leaves, again, I'm going to use a sponge dauber and add some color to them. And the color I'm going to put on might surprise you. It's going to be cherry cobbler. Now, I've tried it actually with Cajun Craze, and it makes it kind of the rust color, which is nice. And I settled on tried the cherry cobbler, and I settled on this color because you can leave it a little bit, just a little bit of color on there, or you can put it just a little bit darker if you want, so that you still have 2 different colors here. You can see that's the original color, the crushed curry. This is with just a little bit of cherry cobbler put on. That's with a little bit more. And then I'm going to add, again, make this one a little bit darker. And it doesn't really look red, even though this is cherry cobbler. It looks like the dark rust color that these oak leaves get in the fall. I have a neighbor who has an oak tree, and her leaves turn that very dark shade of rust like this. So you can see, trying to get you, there we go, you can see how that looks. Isn't that pretty? Okay, now we can start building on our card front. And what I like to do here is just kind of place the items on here without gluing them on it first, just to kind of see where I want everything. Otherwise, you start gluing, and then you're like, oh no, I didn't really want that there. I wanted to put something else. But you can see I'm kind of layering all this in here like this. Okay, and then I'm going to be putting some of those other leaves around here. I like the darker one up there at the top, or I'm sorry, the lighter one, and then the darker one towards the bottom. And again, another dark one coming off this side, like that. Okay, so that's about how I want them. Now what I'm going to do is, actually I'm going to put this one on first, but I'm going to leave my pumpkin in place there so I know where to put this. And I'm gluing this on, a few little dabs of glue here and there, But I'm not going to press it down real tight and get that, you know, real firm, because I want to slide these under here. So these are my acorns I'm going to do next. And you can see I'm just putting a few dabs on the acorns itself. And I'm going to tuck that under here, bring that bottom acorn on top of the leaf, and the other acorns will come up to the corner like that. So you can see how that's coming together. So I can go ahead and press that one down, but I want to slide these ends of these leaves underneath that larger leaf. So again, let's just lift this up a little bit like that. And then this one, same thing. We'll lift that up just a little bit. And once I like where it's placed, I can go ahead and press these in place like that. Okay, my pumpkin's going to go over there. Before I put that on, I have one more leaf here that I want to add. So I'm just going to put a few little drops of glue there, and this one's going to come off the side like that. Okay, so now let's put this large pumpkin on. And with this, again, I'm just gluing this flat onto the card front, about like so. And then the smaller pumpkin, I'm going to put up on dimensionals. Just a couple dimensionals is really all you need here. So it's such a pretty fall card. So this is just going to overlap that larger pumpkin like that. And then I have my vines. So I'm going to use the large vine, of course, on the larger pumpkin. A couple dabs of glue on the leaves and just a little bit on the tendrils coming off there. Okay, and we're going to put this one across the pumpkin, kind of like that. That leaf will be covering the end of the stem of the pumpkin. And then these are just going to flow over everything in its place. So I got it coming over the pumpkin, over the leaves a little bit, and then over the top. And then for my little vine, my little leaf with the vine, we're going to use this one for the small pumpkin. So again, I'm just going to cover up the end of this stem here with the leaf. Just kind of gives it a little bit more life to it. Okay, so there's where we are so far. Now I want a greeting up here. So again, from the September Paper Pumpkin add-on dies, there's a pretty little die that says hello. Gives a thin, nice font to it. So I cut one out of, I'll show you, I cut one out of Early Espresso, and I put that on, and I thought, well, it's not really sending me. I like it there, but I didn't really care for it like that. So then I cut one out of Cajun Craze and put that there, and I thought, even though it matches, it coordinates with the background here, I didn't really care for that either. So what I did is I used both of these. And let me show you what I did. I'm putting the Early Espresso one on first. Just a couple little dabs of glue. So let's get this in place. You want to make sure that you're not hanging over the side or the top of your card. So I'm putting that one on like that. And then I'm using the Cajun Craze, and I'm going to put this right on top of the Early Espresso hello, but it's going to be off center just a little bit so that the Early Espresso one looks like a shadow. So I don't want to just plop it on. I'm going to start with one end here and then just kind of move this to where I want it to get that shadow effect. before I press everything down. Okay, now isn't that pretty? You got a nice little shadow effect going with your greeting there. Okay, now for the inside, again, I have a piece of Cajun Craze that I'm going to put as my first layer. And I will have all the measurements of these are on my blog, which is time4stamping.com. The 4 in that title is the number 4, so it's time4stamping.com. Okay, there's my first layer, coordinates with the layer on the front. And then for the inside, I have a piece of Very Vanilla, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that pretty little pumpkin again on the corner, the bottom corner. So my first color is Cajun Craze right there. And then I'll use the pumpkin pie for my second layer, going right over that. Okay, and then I will use again pecan pie with the smaller stem, and we'll put that right on there like that, and we have a pretty little pumpkin sitting there. Okay, and in the stamp set that's called Amber Autumn, which again is a new stamp set, has a pretty greeting on there that says grateful for you. Now I'm going to turn this into a Thanksgiving card, so I like the Cajun Craze and I like this sentiment, so I'm just going to put that kind of towards the top like that. And then I'm going to be using from a retired stamp set. Now this one happens to be Painted Pheasant. It has a pretty Happy Thanksgiving in it. And I'm just going to put that right under that other greeting. So it says grateful for you, Happy Thanksgiving. Now, of course, as I mentioned, this is a retired set where this stamp came from. So if you wanted a Thanksgiving card, you can use whatever stamps you have on hand, or just handwrite it in there if you don't have one that says Happy Thanksgiving. Okay, so now let's put this inside, and we are finished with our card. Now if you like, you could also stamp the small pumpkin on the front of your envelope, just like we did for the in the corner of the inside like this. Okay, so there again is my inside. There's the front. And for the envelope, you can go ahead and stamp again just like that. The Cajun Craze for the first layer, the basic or the pumpkin pie for the second layer, and then the nice pecan pie stem in there. Okay, so there we have a pretty pumpkin card. And again, that's a new stamp set called Beautiful Pumpkins. And that is, there we go, that's an online special, I believe. Comes with the die set, and it's really a pretty set to have. Good for any fall type card, or Thanksgiving is what I'm using it for. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, please give me a thumbs up, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.